Now we're going to the Southern Ranges. A Weathersome Experience is the title of the presentation, and I'll call on Phil Dawson to take us through that.
The shots were all wet. That was the summer we just had, or we think we had. Yep. The weather to the start of this trip, where we organised 12 people to go across the Southern Ranges, started off shocking with blizzards to medium levels for the first few days. We thought the weather was a dog, so we had to go somewhere else. I always like to go somewhere I haven't been before, so we found a place called Dog Hill in the Mount Field National Park. And you can see our track there in blue. So part of the party started on this, the rest decided they'd wait till Tuesday. So our first challenge was crossing a creek off the track to get onto the plains. And the weather stayed away from the plains of the Broad Valley. And so we managed to get up to the peak and back, and here's some falls around the Mount Field area. And then we had some reasonable weather to wander our way down south to try for the Southern Ranges. And we found some old buildings and some nice places at Franklin, and I've found this fella, Dr. William Dawson, no relative of me, but apparently he was one of the early pioneers of the Franklin area. All sorts of descriptions of what medicine was like in those days with no anaesthetics. So here's our route on the first day. So we started off at the car park. We only started with 11 because on the previous walk one person injured a knee and went home. So we had 11 on this one. We picked up a ring in at the car park, but after about an hour this person fell over and broke their arm and had to be expertly bandaged by one of the doctors on the trip and sent home. After another hour, another walker decided he just couldn't handle it, wasn't fit enough, and he was recovering from a cold or something, so he went back. So we lost 2 on the first day, so we were 3 down already. There were some nice flowers. This is the white waratah, and this is up on the Moonlight Ridge. You can see a dracophyllum, a red one in the foreground there. Some of these were the best ones we saw in the summer, all summer. Sundew. And the weather was looking half reasonable, although it was still fairly windy. And by the time we hit the Moonlight Hills, the weather was fairly strong. One person decided to go over Hill 1. Dracophyllum, they were very good on this ridge. So that's the hippo on the left, Lila Tear in the middle, and the coxcomb on the right, which was our next day's destination. More of the coxcomb, and there's a nice waterfall below it, sheltering behind the low vegetation from the wind. So the next day was probably the best day of the trip. Got up the top of Mount La Perouse in perfect conditions, and here's the route for not all the party, which I'll explain later. So it started off reasonably sunny and no wind, so we left the campsite at Pigsty Pond. I don't know why it's called Pigsty Pond, it's a lovely place. Climbing Mount La Perouse, heading off Mount La Perouse out to the coxcomb, out to that little lump out there. Looked fairly rugged, but we found quite an easy route out there. The wind held off, it was not too bad, and we found a nice morning tea spot below it. So heading back to pick up the big packs to carry on the trip. climbing over Maxwell's Ridge, and that's Pinda's Peak in the cloud. And then you can just see precipitous bluff on the left just under the cloud with Mount Wylie and Mount Victoria to the right. Looking off Maxwell Ridge back down to the Pigsty Ponds, our previous night's campsite. This is Knife Mountain above us, so some of the party wanted to go there. Lake Mountain to the right. And when we got to Ooze Lake, there was a bit of a mutiny, and 3 or 4 decided they'd stay here to do Knife and Lake Mountain. So the rest of us carried on. As we got closer to Pinda's Peak, the wind picked up and the fog was down. Looking back at La Perouse from the slopes of Pinda's Peak. So there's the top of Pinda's Peak just there, but the wind was quite strong, so we decided we won't do that. We might try it on the way back. And so 2 more turned back around Pinda's Peak. So we had 4 of us. We camped on Pandani Knob with this great view of Pinda's Peak. Moonlight Hills, La Perouse, Knife and Lake Mountain, Pinda's Peak, Bryan Beach, New River Lagoon, Ironbound.
Sorry.
Sue and Feed Up on Wylie, Precipitous Bluff. Victoria Cross, Western and Eastern Arthurs in the background, Bisdee, Harts Mountains in the distance, Adamson's Peak in the distance, Bruny Island in the distance. That was that afternoon from the top of Mount Wylie, and we still had time to do Victoria Cross, but everyone decided they're a bit tired, we'll have a rest because we're going to go to Precipitous Bluff the next day. Here's our campsite on the Wylie plateau, looking at Precipitous Bluff. So we had to wander around the plateau with great views, but this was the next morning, and you can see that line of cloud in the distance. The wind was picking up. There was supposed to be a slight front coming through, they said. We had to wander around the plateau in the evening, hoping for a good day the next day. This is climbing Mount Wylie. That's on Mount the fungus has been infested. So evening light on Mount Victoria from the Wylie Plateau, and Federation Peak in the distance. So, and there's the morning's weather. Moving in rapidly, we decided other people who were supposed to come that night to join us to climb Precipitous Bluff had obviously decided not to, so we decided to beat a retreat from the weather.
Victoria Cross, Bisdee, Federation Peak, Gold, Bruny Island and Doncaster Channel, Southport Lagoon, Raychurch Bay.
So we headed back over some very windy place. I didn't take many photos of the afternoon back to Ooze Lake because the weather was shocking, and it was still windy but fine for our last day out. So we walked out from Ooze Lake. Some nice views. moments. We decided we had to climb something, even though we hadn't climbed up. So we climbed up hill 1 for a view. Panorama of everything. There's the Moonlight Hills. As we descended, summer sort of hit us, so we had to hide from the insects. So we walked through some rugged country, and this made me think of the beauty of God's creation. There were difficulties of bad weather and sometimes very thick scrub. Both of these are signs of the fall and the curse on the ground, causing thorns and thistles to grow. There's plenty of thorns in that country. Paul tells us in Romans 8:22 that the whole creation is groaning. He goes on to talk about the Christian's hope. In verse 28 he says, "We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose." The Bible promises there'll be a new heaven and earth, in which there'll be no more crying, no more thorns and thistles. So next time you're bushwalking through some thick scrub, think about these verses.
To 4. That was not actually a boots and all walk. So we try not for that to happen, but they all got home safely, so nothing to worry about there. Thank you, Phil.